really, what happened? Why did we feel the need to do this thing? I mean, LATMA is an initiative that I started through the Center for Security Policy, where I work as a senior fellow for Middle Eastern Affairs to try to impact the way that the Israeli media presents information to the Israeli public. And why is it that we decided, wait a minute, we have to do this in English, we have to do something special in English about the flotilla? And the reason is because the flotilla was an instance par excellence, or an example par excellence, of the information war that is being waged against Israel on a worldwide basis, and how extraordinarily dangerous it is. That information war that we talk about a lot, but we seldom think about really what it's about and what its aim is. We talk about media bias against Israel. We talk about the distortion of Middle East truth by the media in the Western world, and of course in the Arab world. But we seldom think about what all of this means and what the goal is, and how it impacts decision-making in Israel and throughout the world. And so I just wanted to back up from what I think one of the ways to combat it is, or the way that I've found to combat it, and talk for a second about what's at stake. So for the past generation, really, even more than a generation, Israel has been the target of a concerted campaign that began with collaboration between what was the Soviet Union and the KGB and elements in the Arab world, and specifically the PLO, to target Israel. After Israel's massive victory in 1967, more and more people in the Arab world and in the communist bloc came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to be possible to physically annihilate Israel, and therefore Israel had to be delegitimized to the point that it was no longer able to launch a coherent defense of itself, because it would no longer be able to justify its existence to the world or to itself. And so we saw the beginning of a campaign that has only grown over time and has really escalated in recent years to demonize Israel, to delegitimize Israel, with the aim of denying Israel the right to self-defense and the right to a coherent understanding and ability to express its own right to exist. And that information war that Israel has been victimized by and targeted by really since around 1969, but again, with an enormous amount of escalation since 2000, has three main components. And we know them all because we see them all every single day, but I think it's important just to set them out very clearly. The three components are hiding information from the public, distorting or presenting distortions or false information to the public, and holding Israel to a double standard that it can't possibly live up to. So just in brief, what do I mean when I say we hide the news? Well, for instance, there are major stories relating to Israel and the Middle East that are simply not presented to the world audience. One of them, a major one, is that the so-called moderate Fatah faction of the PLO, which is in charge of the U.S.-sponsored Palestinian Authority, that the United States is now building an army for Fatah under General Dayton. What we never hear, what is hidden from view, is the fact that Fatah is a terrorist organization, that Fatah's leaders are terrorists, that more Israelis since 2000 have been murdered in bombings that have been conducted by Fatah and affiliated forces than were killed by Hamas and Islamic Jihad terror attacks. This is a major piece of information that is simply not reported to the public, so that there is a distinction made between Fatah, which is presumably not terrorist, and Hamas, which is, although now the understanding that Hamas is a terrorist organization has been eroding, but basically there has been that distinction that Hamas is considered a terrorist organization and Fatah is not considered a terrorist organization, and this is quite simply wrong. It isn't that people say that Fatah is not a terrorist organization per se, it's that they don't mention almost ever the fact that Fatah is the most active and most deadly terrorist organization in the Palestinian Authority, in the Palestinian areas. And, you know, another thing that they hide is the fact that the Palestinians are not interested in what is referred to as a two-state solution, right? It's always a question, does Israel accept a Palestinian state? But almost no mention has been made of the fact that there is no major Palestinian leader, including the supposedly moderate Mahmoud Abbas, who heads a Fatah terrorist organization, that is willing to accept the existence of Israel. And so when we talk about a two-state solution, we're talking about something that is completely theoretical, because the Arab world as a whole and the Palestinians specifically have never accepted the right of the Jewish state to exist. This is information that is simply hidden from view. And as a consequence, the discussion that we have about the Middle East is completely distorted, because it's based upon hiding key pieces of information from the public throughout the United States, throughout, of course, Europe, and throughout much of the rest of the world, including Israel. And the second aspect, as I said, of this information war against Israel is that we are presented with false information. The narrative that we are presented with about the Middle East, about Israel and its neighbors specifically, on a daily basis includes a lot of lies and gross distortions of reality. For instance, in the clip that we just saw, we talked about the fact that you had a ship that was commanded by Turkish jihadists who were en route to Gaza, which is controlled by Hamas, which is an illegal terrorist organization. And the aim of that ship was to end or weaken Israel's lawful maritime blockade of the Gaza coast. That is, this was a terrorist ship whose aim was to provide aid and comfort to a terrorist organization and to weaken a lawful act of self-defense that was being and continues to be implemented by the State of Israel. And instead, what we got, and what we continue to get in every single subsequent follow-up story about the incident with the Mavi Marmara terror ship, is we have that referred to as a flotilla of peace activists. And this is quite simply a lie. This is not hiding news. This is presenting a false picture of events to the public. These characterizations are utterly and completely false. Another one that we get all the time is hardline Israelis, that the government of Israel is run by hardline Israeli politicians. Benjamin Netanyahu is a hardline leader. Avigdor Lieberman, the foreign minister, is a hardline leader, etc. Ariel Sharon was a hardline leader. And on the other hand, opposing these hardline Israelis are moderate Palestinians. Mahmoud Abbas, the terrorist sponsor and the Holocaust denier, is a moderate. And he stands opposed to the hardline Netanyahu. And again, these are utterly false distortions of reality. They present the reader or the consumer of news throughout the world with a completely false picture of reality that distorts beyond belief the actual conversation that we end up having about the Middle East. So that deranged, essentially, by these false characterizations of reality, our professors, our journalists, our policymakers throughout the Western world go forth and seek to implement solutions that are completely irrelevant to the reality on the ground, because they are based on a complete falsification of that reality as reflected in the daily news and, of course, in the school books that people read about or read when they try to study what's happening in the Middle East. Another one that we get is illegal settlement. Another one that we get is the characterization of international law as something that has absolutely nothing to do with the law of nations. So basically, almost all the terminology that we have used to describe the reality on the ground in the Middle East is a complete distortion or falsification of reality. The settlement